we're going to pay for through property tax. And so that's the way that's working. Now, we're a big state, and every county, I tell everybody, the only thing that is exactly the same in the 254 counties that we have in this state, from Loving County with approximately 70 people, to Harris County with over 4.6 million people, is that we each have a commissioner's court that's made up of 4 commissioners and a county judge. And that's about where the similarities end. To give you just an even better example, if you were to combine the population of Dallas and Tarrant County, it would be about 4.6 million people, which is similar to the size of Harris County. Well, in Dallas and Tarrant County combined, we have approximately 60,000 citizens who live in the unincorporated area of those counties. All the rest of them live in the cities, and they receive services from the cities. In Harris County, over 2 million of the citizens live in the unincorporated area. Roads and bridges, which is one of the things in the unincorporated area that counties are responsible for. If you were to take Dallas, Tarrant, Bear, and Travis, and combine them, and look at all of the unincorporated miles in those 4, it's almost half of what Harris County has. Now, I know today we're talking about property taxes, but I think, again, before we get into a discussion about a specific category of tax, we need to look at kind of where we are overall. The Brookings Institute in 2015 said that Texas was 29th we ranked 29th among the other states as far as the collection of state and local tax per capita. In 2016, that moved to 30th. And so I think one of the first discussions that we have to have is that based upon the quantity and the quality of the services that are provided, are we happy at being 29th or 30th? We're moving in a lower direction. So does that mean we want less services or less quality of those services? Or might we want to move a little bit higher in order to improve things? And we've talked about the November election said that as a general public, I don't think we're satisfied with public education. Now, some will argue that that's not the quality or that it's not how much we're spending, but it's how we're funding what we are spending. But I will tell you this morning, in this very audience, the speaker said we need, twice he said, we need to put more dollars into public education. So I think that's something we've got to look at. Now, once we determine whether we're satisfied or we want to put less or more, we then have to determine of the category of taxes that we have, how are we going to spread those dollars among the various categories. And in Texas, we know that primarily that's property tax, sales tax, and yes, there's some in the form of severance and there's some in the form of gasoline tax. But heaven forbid, we, like the plague, we have avoided, and I pray always will avoid, the PIT. And what is a PIT? Personal income tax. And I think that that's something we'll always want to do. But once we've said, okay, there are the places we're going to look for, then we can decide whether we want to shift something from property tax to state sales tax or to severance tax or to a gasoline tax to bring in those funds. And then once we've determined that, then we get into looking at the individual category, property tax, sales tax. And I was told this morning, a group spoke, and they said that if you look at the categories and you look at the amount of exemptions that over time we have approved, that basically on an annual basis, we have approved $60 billion worth of exemptions. So when we talk about sales tax, someone said, well, maybe we raise sales tax. Well, we might not have to raise sales tax. We might just have to, as we do, as the state does in many of its agencies, on a regular basis, they sunset. They look at agencies and determine whether or not those exemptions, those exclusions, are still necessary, and or do they need to be changed a little bit? So now what we've done is we've looked within the category, and we've said, first off, here's what we think we need to provide the quantity and quality of services. Here's how we want to divide that among the categories, and then within each category, we can do that. And so I think as we begin to approach this discussion, as well as other that I know that you have on your agenda, I think that's one of the things we should look at and not just solely focus on one without looking at how it pertains to overall.
All right, thanks, sir. Further?
Thank you, Drew Springer, House District 68. A little more about, I have 10% of the state of Texas landmass. It'd be bigger than 72 countries. So we have some of those, a little bit different than my counterparts in Harris County. But 2 sessions now on Ways and Means. Met with the speaker this afternoon, said, I want to continue to work on this. Because I've followed Senator Betancourt's hearings. I ran into the lieutenant governor on Sunday and said, hey, I've been listening to Paul for the last 2.5 hours, and he looked at me like, what's wrong with you? Okay, and I said, I'm just listening to his hearing. Yeah, right. And that's why we knew what we were talking about this morning from the gentleman from that city who had basically done what I've seen so many do, is as appraisals go up, sit there and say, we held your tax rate the same, so we haven't raised your taxes, which is a lot. And so, we've continued to work on that, and everybody's got plans as we go through. We heard the 210% number earlier. This is what that looks like by category from your counties, your cities, and your schools, as well as the special purpose districts. I will say, if you don't like special purpose districts, in my 25,000 square miles, I have one single special purpose.
That's God's country. Let's go.
You got a few more than that, don't you?
Just got a few more.
And this is really what breaks down as a percentage overall, and as the judge and everybody has said, schools make up about half of that. I've said that in all my town halls. I don't hide it. I says, as your appraisal goes up, we raise more money. It comes into the state. We have to put less of state dollars in. It's the same taxpayers, by the way, both local and state. You're the same people out there that are paying that. We've used it for primarily healthcare and health and human services. It's gone from a small percentage to roughly half of what we put in, or I should say, it's about the equal to what we do with from the school standpoint. So now we're about that 60-40, 62-38, whatever we want to call it. And we need to look at ways of moving that back down. Judge hit a lot of the things I've really been working on, which is we've done $60 billion worth of exemptions. What do you mean when you say an exemption from that? 1997, we gave everybody a tax break. We said, you don't have to pay tax on aspirin and ibuprofen anymore, over-the-counter medicine. That's $500 million to buy any. We could use that money to buy down property taxes in that M&O rate. There's some other things that we don't tax today that we need to probably look at how we do that. As technology changes, we now have Wayfair that's coming in. That's about $250 million a year. We need to use that new revenue not to grow government, but to buy down property taxes. Vape juice, that's a new thing. And friends with the guy who is now the government relations for Juul that has 80% of the market. Most other states charge a 5 to 10 cent per milliliter on there. There's some additional money. We can come through there, we can work through these categories, and we can find a way of buying down that M&O piece of the school to make it more in line to back to at least that 50-50, if not get it 60% from the state and 40% over from the local standpoints on that. Look forward to having that conversation on how we do that, but it is definitely one of those that we cannot continue to ask people to pay and basically feel like they're renting their houses. And that's the message we continue to get. And if we don't fix it this session, I think we're in deep trouble. We've got a great opportunity ahead of us. The big three are all working fantastically together on that. The Senate and the House, not only did I listen to them while I'm driving down, but we had a meeting this morning with 14 county judges to discuss how can we do that, and if and when the state buys down that M&O, how can we make sure the cities and counties don't backfill that? And that's when we're talking about revenue triggers. And when do we trigger elections? Do we go back to the way it was before inflation took off at 5% when we moved it to 8%? And the other thing, and I think it's really clear from my side of the chamber, is we don't think that citizens should have to petition their government when we think we've gone too far.
Amen.
Let's just do an automatic election. What's this petition nonsense all
Exactly.
about?
We do an automatic election, and one of the things that used to also be the case is, our local, all of our officials were on a 2-year cycle. So I've had people tell me, well, they could throw me out of the city council. And I said, no, because it takes 6 years. You can only get a third every 2 years to be able to do that on certain cycles. I know our county judges and commissioners, it's a 4-year cycle. And we talked about saying, do we change those to back to where everybody runs on a 2-year cycle from those standpoints?
Well, I might add that there are some cities, Fort Worth, Arlington, that vote the whole council at the same time. So not everybody
They
is
went
on
from a
that.
2 to 3. You're exactly right. I remember Betsy Price said we need to go from 2 years to 3 years because some commissioners need to vote on things they shouldn't have to face the voters on as quickly. And I think that's part of that problem.
So Representative Springer, so thank you all for the opening remarks. Let's start back with you. With your idea here, basically what you're trying to do is broaden the base in the sales tax in order to replace the school maintenance and operation property tax. Is that right?
8%. If you go we can definitely look at all the way. I think there's a reasonable period that maybe it's a 50% homestead exemption, maybe it's a 50% buy down of the total M&O where you go from $1 to 50 cents and compressing that rate and doing that. Yes, you can get to
From left
you
to
do
right
a lot of changes and
is
people may say,
Representative Drew
reach a
Springer,
point, and
Judge
tax policy
Whitley out
that
of
drives
Tarrant County,
businesses, employers out of the state,
Senator
I think
Paul
would be bad tax
Bettencourt,
policy.
But one thing I
and John
want
Diamond.
to at least begin to get you thinking in terms of this. We talk a lot about percentages. But how many of you deposit percentages or write checks in percentages? When you look at it from a dollar perspective, yes, from 2007 to 2017, county tax collection in the state of Texas went up about 70%. On a per capita basis, that's $93. At the same time, personal income went up about 30%. On a per capita basis, that's over $10,000. So let's remember, we write checks in dollars, not in percentages. And that, again, I want to go back to where do we need to be? Are we happy with 30? Do we want to be 40? Do we want to be 28? What do we expect to get for that? And I think that's the starting point. And then I am all for a redistribution from maybe property tax to sales tax or something else, or a more equal spread on that deal. But again, we pay in dollars, not in percentages.
If I could, Judge, I don't mean to disagree with you because I'm not sure about the per capita stats because I haven't seen them. But the stats in Dallas and Houston are that the average home just in 4 years was paying $3,600 in taxes. They're now paying $5,000. That's a $1,400 increase on the average home in 4 years. And let's say that, for argumentation purposes, county is 20% of the number. Okay, so, well, but some counties are a little higher because I'm going to actually credit your county here in a second. But we take that, so that's about $280 more per year per household. So when we talk per capita, we got to think who's writing the check, because the household owners are writing the check. The individual kids aren't paying the tax. Now, let me tell you what's really happening on county. And see, look, we got a spending problem here too, okay? So next thing, I'll give you some data here, okay? But
Go ahead,
All right,
sir.
okay.
Senator.
Because Tarrant County's gonna end up as the soft landing on this, okay? Harris County, total taxes levied in 4 years, okay? 51% increase. That's over $400 million just for their county, not their hospital district, not their flood control district, you know, et cetera. You know,
Wow.
I mean, because they've got 3 taxing jurisdictions alone, they actually have 4. But that's 51% more money in 4 years. There's no population and economic growth statistic that justifies a 51% increase in government in 4 years. It just doesn't exist.
Yep. That's Senator Paul Betancourt.
$411 million. Okay.
Per capita.
In per capita? Okay, it's a 51% increase. They were taking in roughly 1.1 billion. They're now at 1.75 over that period of time. I mean, these are huge magnitude increases. Bear County, 37% increase in 4 years. Well, they're down closer to 9% simple interest. That's all they grew at, okay? Dallas County, running to a close third at 33%. Again, hundreds of millions of dollars, nearly $300 million more, okay? Then we get to the garden spot, okay?
Thank you.
No, we're here. No, Travis County, okay? Shocking, okay? Now, I'm gonna say one thing, I'm teasing them. It's shocking because to keep their levy growth down to only 17.6%, their commissioner's court cut their tax rate by nearly 12 pennies. See, as values go up, you gotta cut the tax rate. And the garden spot was Tarrant County. They had a 15.2% increase in levy, but they only cut their tax rate by a penny. Now, so I can't yell at the judge because, you know, he cut his tax rate, all right? But I will tell you, in advance, I mean, we had a guy from Mount Bellevue come to our last hearing, just in late November. He walked in and said, what you're proposing is the end of the world, okay? You're gonna you're gonna basically starve out cities and counties. He didn't even have his own data. We asked him, how much did you raise taxes last year? He didn't know. This is the general manager of the city sent by the Texas Municipal League to go testify at the Committee on Property Tax. Now, my crack staff, which is over there, okay, all right, okay, basically got on the internet and looked at his own financial statements, and the number was like 6.5%. He wasn't even hitting the 8% rollback rate, but he was in there saying it's the death of civilization. Now, we gotta, listen, I'm willing to recognize the obvious that we have to lower school tax rates too. We'll talk about that later, because the commission actually had new money for both new programs and for tax relief.
It's for several different jurisdictions.
Elected officials to stop lying to their people that they're not raising taxes because they're not raising the tax rate. And if I hear that in the next set of hearings, okay, we're gonna post those things on Facebook and interject them into their cities or their counties. Because I'm sick and tired of people lying about it. You know, if we can talk about Robin Hood and needing to wean off of it, everybody needs to bring everything to the table so we can get this problem fixed. Sorry, Vance, I got on a roll, my apologies.
No, it's all right, quite all right. Anyway, you bring up the good point though about spending. Spending is what ultimately drives taxes. I mean, when you think about where taxes come from, first you have to think about, okay, what public services do we want from our government? There's probably also going to be some rent seeking, some voter trying to get votes along the way. Those things go into it. Then you think about how much is that going to cost? That gets you your spending. And then you figure out what's the most efficient form of taxation to fund that spending. And, you know, something that I think about too is are property taxes really the most efficient form of taxation? If we want to have an economic juggernaut in the state of Texas, what form of taxation should we have?
That's a softball for the duck.
It's a consumption tax. It's definitely not a problem. The economic literature is very clear that the property tax is part excise tax, part pure tax on capital. So the part of the tax that's kind of equals the national average, you're just taxing capital. The part that's above that causes capital to locate in different jurisdictions, therefore increasing deadweight laws.
But what about the issue though, if you have Because I know Judge Whitley, he's talked about having a three-legged stool. And if we don't have an income tax, get rid of a property tax, let's say, now you only have one-legged stool, right? And could that make it to where we are depending on a more volatile source of revenue?
Or pushing us toward that debt.
Yeah.
Well, I
He's
mean,
coming back from the other side of it.
we're
I
advocating
agree with
just
you, we need a consumption tax overall.
Yeah, well, I'm just saying we shift more, we can shift more to that. You asked what's the most efficient, and I'm saying this consumption tax is more efficient. I will leave it to the voters to decide exactly what they want to do. I'm not advocating complete eradication of the property tax, and obviously we need more than a single source of revenue. We saw others. But I want to fight back against this idea that we need to make this decision about how much we're going to spend before this financing decision, because what I want to know before I commit to spending more money is how they're going to spend the money. I don't want to spend the money on a non-competitive education system. If we're going to stick with the same education system we have now, I absolutely don't want to spend the money. On public pensions that are gonna default us and drive us into bankruptcy and not tax us up later. So when we have responsible government, I'll be willing to spend more money. But the government I see now, they need more constraint, not more leeway.
Amen.
I guess the one,
Appreciate it.
the one point I would make, and let's talk about education, because right now we are ranked at about 42nd in funding. And if you look at the 4th and 8th grade math and science test results, we're about 31st. So schools, teachers, funded at 42nd, ranked at 31st. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. Perryman has said we're number one as far as business, but that we've got a problem with quality of life and we have a problem with education. And I'm not satisfied at being 31st out of 50 states as far as where our students rank in education. Now, whether that means that more money solves that problem, I'm not going to say it does. But I will say that if you look at Dallas ISD, they threw a lot more money the last 4 years, and they moved from a C to a B.
How much is the merit pay?
The percentages that is being spent between instruction, administration in the various areas has changed by less than 1% over that 10-year period of time. So there's not been a significant movement in that area. And so again, what I'm just saying is, yes, we may have a spending problem, but our spending, again, is ranked 30th. So you can look at it, however you want to look, we're 30th. So do we want to provide the same level of services, less, continue, we move down. And maybe that's the way we want to continue to move. But it still is dollars, and you mentioned that, okay, that child isn't paying the $93 in county tax. That child is also not earning that $10,000 in personal income. So when you're looking at it and trying to compare, what I'm saying is per capita is a way to do that. And on a per capita basis, income from 2007 to 2017 has gone up by $10,000 per capita. A lot more people coming into the area. County tax, and even by what you're saying is school and others, if you put all that together, it's not going to have gone up by more than probably $1,000 per capita. Now, a family of 4, that's $4,000.
That's a lot of money.
Yes, it is, but $40,000 of income is a lot of money too.
Okay, but, you know, does, unfortunately,
Those are comptroller numbers.
Well, that question is not exactly.
Those are comptroller numbers.
You know, one thing is, yeah, we can be 30th in one of the top 5 in the graduation rate. We are addressing it by realizing that as kids go on, we're doing a 30 by 60 because we know we need more kids with a certification or a college associate or a 4-year degree. But I'm just a simple little country boy, and I try to put things in a simple way. You have 20 kids in class, and that's probably low on average in the state of Texas. And we give $11,000, let me rephrase that. Y'all give $11,000 to put a roof over their head, pay a teacher, and educate. That's $220,000 a classroom. How can we not pay a teacher $75,000 and put a roof on their head and have a better results as far as their scoring and aptitude to go to work? Now,
Yep.
we have a challenge in Texas that it drives me crazy to hear all these Northeast elites talk about how our education is. Let's put the Mexican border right against them, because we educate every kid in Texas. And yes, it is a challenge, and we are trying to do our best in that challenge, and we need to do better every single year, and we work on doing better every time we do that. But those 5.3 million kids that are in a public school system, and I also get tired, and I heard some of the bigger cities say, we're mad about Robin Hood. And I'm sitting here going, you're counting Robin Hood, $1 you send to the state of Texas that we then send back to your big city, because those kids chose to go to a public school called a charter school. And they're counting that as Robin Hood, and I don't think they should.
If I could ask myself, do we have those TEA slides, guys, that show the shifts? Can you bring them up for a second? That's the Dallas Morning News calculation, by the way. Go back one if you could. Okay. That shows you the actual increase by, and this is Dallas Morning News, so Nielsen say this is not Paul Bettencourt putting up numbers. This is one of my more striding critics, actually, on property taxes. As you can see that we were at $3,700 for an average family, okay? And again, families pay taxes, per capita kids don't. And then you go to $5,000 over that, so that in Dallas County, that's about a $1,300 increase over that period of time. You gotta click ahead and see if you can find those TDA slides real fast, because we've got data. That's a one for Harris County that shows all the taxing jurisdictions and the spread. The ones that cut taxes are in the lower area, the ones that don't cut their tax rates are in the higher. Next. And again, they were at 37.5. They went to 4,900, but they started at 3,500, so that's about a $1,400 increase. Very consistent data across the state. And but I want to say this importantly. If we get the TEA sides, keep clicking forward to find. When you look at the public finance of public schools, actually Dallas ISD is actually done very well. They have a program called ACE, where they took their money and figured out how to pay teachers more. And fascinatingly, it's based upon performance. Okay? Good teachers get more money. Okay? Shocking concept, okay? But an important one. Okay? The Lieutenant Governor's already talked about raising the base salaries for teachers. But the commission report talks about, again, about performance-based pay, and also performance-based outcomes. There are 98% low social economic high schools that are involved with P-TECH and Promise, where Dallas ISD works with their community college and American Airlines and IBM, and they go into the schools and they help the graduation rate in what was the worst performing high schools in Dallas, and astonishingly positive numbers. So when we work together and have leadership, you get good results. Now, quite frankly, as a Houstonian, Big D is kicking H-Town's butt, because right now, I've got a board of HISD that hurls racial epithets at each other. I've got HCC trustees in jail, okay? And of course, nobody wants to cooperate under that circumstance, all right? Because businesses wouldn't send money into that type of lack of leadership. Now, one more, I want to show you these two pie charts. Very important, because there's been so much disinformation out there. This is the all-in of all dollars spent in public education in Texas. Okay, the big piece of the pie is local property taxes. Okay, and the next piece of the pie is state, and then the green is federal, and then the yellow is recapture. So 10 years ago, local property taxes were 52%. Everything else was 48%. Shocking! In 2012, the local share went down to 46%. Why? Because of the federal stimulus from the Obama administration.
American Recovery and Investment Act.
That's it, right? Raised the federal share nearly 13%. And when that went away, okay, the Fed share dropped to 10%, the state share dropped to 36%, but the actual local share is 50%. So what you hear is not right, okay? These are actual all dollars in, counted by like TEA, federal, state, local. 50% of local and 50% of everything else. Now, I think we need to freeze that chart.
But wouldn't the recapture be in there too, because that's property tax?
Yeah, no, recapture's in there too. That's
So it would be
2.8%. Yeah.
53%,
No, well, but that's money we take to redistribute.
but it's property taxes
I know,
that
but
you're
that's-
redistributing.
Yeah, but Glenn, if you read the proposal, you know that what we're trying to do is cut recapture. And we're trying to freeze it or actually reduce it.
So for that, but on that slide, property tax, that 2.8 is property tax.
Sure, of course it is. It's money that comes in that we, at the state, that we redistribute. That's why we need to wean off of it. Okay, now, but these are the real numbers. Okay, and it's important for everybody to know because what you hear is not always the facts.
So one thing that we've been working on at the foundation is to figure out a way to lower property taxes. And what we've had out there is to have cities, counties, and special purpose districts have an automatic rollback election of 2.5%, which is what the governor has proposed as well. And then for the school maintenance and operation portion is to limit state spending to 4%, right? Which GRR increased, that the comptroller said earlier this week, by 8.1%. Take half of that, use it for spending on whatever you want, education, healthcare, so forth, and use the other 4% to buy down the school maintenance and operation property tax. That would be an 8% cut in the school maintenance and operation property tax. And we could eliminate the school maintenance and operation within about a decade. So I wonder, because one thing about it with the rollback, right, is that you don't necessarily lower property taxes.
No, you absolutely don't.
It
Okay.
slows the growth, which is good, right? That's a great step in the right direction.
There's going to be a question and answer session later.
Taxpayers across this great state, they're saying they want to pay lower property tax bills.
Well, the state's gonna pay more, and it's gonna be,
Right, no, and the state, and the commission report is that we pay more.
Yeah.
Okay, and we're looking at three sources of revenue for that. We're looking at general revenue, we're looking at, basically, the rainy day fund is effectively full. It's well over 12 billion, it's supposed to be over 15. And so that's an additional 3 billion, so we really have about $12 billion more coming in, not counting the difference in sales tax revenue as Representative Springer talked about with the Supreme Court decision. So we recognize that, and really our recommendation was to lower tax rates and to also do new programs, which include performance-based pay for districts and also performance-based pay for teachers. We need to give teachers a chance to make $92,000 like they're doing in Dallas. We don't want to have teachers just disappear into the administration because that's the only way they can make big money. Okay, and big money being $100,000. But so it's a great report. I want you, if you're interested, get online and read it because it contains a good blueprint to go forward with.
And I really commend y'all for what y'all are working on throughout the last, year and a half now?
Well, it seemed like it was just a year. so-
Okay, all right. It's
but
been a
what we're
lot.
talking about though is still spending more money.
Yeah.
Not spending less, spending more money.
Right, it's new money, but not raising tax rates, it's actually taking advantage of the obvious, which is, we've got an incredible increase in production coming out of the Permian, we've got very strong sales tax numbers coming in, and we've got changes in law at the federal level.
So Representative Springer, so what do you foresee? What's gonna happen this session?
No, I think.
Well, I'm interested in this.
Hey, I'll wait time's I just gotta stop for one minute. Hey, look, I love what Dennis Bynum has said, which is, he doesn't have to have the answer, he just has to make sure we don't leave the room until we find that answer. And we are going to work with our partners in the Senate to come up with a solution that has a combination of property tax reform, which is appraisal districts, rollback elections, those relief, which is finding ways that we switch some of our property tax over to consumption taxes. And we come up with something that works for all of us, that we can come back and know that we gave the citizens what they've really been asking for.
Yeah. Judge, what do you hope to see?
I hope to see us truly get back to the historical partnership that was set up 172 years ago, where instead of sitting on something and blaming one another, that we're truly getting together as the implementing and administering arm of the state and sitting down and talking about the way to most efficiently and effectively spend tax dollars that The legislature decides that we need to spend on education and on other areas of services that we're providing, and they are constitutionally required to spend throughout the bill. But we've got to recognize the difference from one county to the next, and there are tremendous differences between each one of the 254 counties.
I think I had more discussion on the front mic, back mic with one of your Tarrant County constituents yesterday.
I apologize.
On-
Yes, sir, it was.
Real quick so we get to the Q&A.
What gets measured gets fixed. I'm going to quote the Dallas County judge, who tried to cut his property tax rate because his taxes were up 7.2%, and his wages were only up 2.7%. So he did his best to try to get the votes, but he only got one other vote, so he lost it. But even though taxes went up 3 times as fast as wages in Dallas County. When we talk about guidelines from the state, we've talked about the rollback rate and how it's at 8%. It's been that way since the early years, but it actually started out at 5% because the theory was that the good number, government shouldn't grow faster than 5% without the approval of the public. Whatever we do, I want to recognize that spending is the issue. And I also want to get everybody in the room involved on an election in November, whether it's for bond issues, whether it's for tax rate ratification elections, whether it's for rollback approvals, because we've got to get the public involved in voting, because that's the ultimate local control. It's the individual voters that make those decisions. Thank you.
All right. Johnny, any last words?
Yeah, I would like to see an efficient tax system. I'd like to see the rollback votes, and I'd like to see efficient spending of the revenue we raise. It's up for voters to decide how much we spend. I don't want to outcompete New York or California for being one on Brookings spending list.
All right. Yes, yeah, please give him a hand.
So now we're going to turn it over to all of you. I know we're going to have a whole bunch of hands come up. So please turn your brief comment into a question. So we can have a lot of questions here today. So let's start right there by you, Mary Catherine.
Thank you. A couple of
What's your name?
My name is Marion Knowlton. I'm from a small rural county south of San Antonio. And a couple of things, you said that all the counties in Texas share one structure, and that was the county judge and 4 county commissioners. But we also share appraisal districts and chief appraisers. Is there anything to be done, because our appraisal districts spend a lot of money. Every time our board meets, we have an attorney fly down from Dallas at a very high cost to sit in on a meeting. My first question is,
Let's have time for one question.
okay, is there any thought to appraisal districts and any reform of that?
Appraisal districts.
Oh, yes, we've got, it's pages and pages of appraisal reform in SB 2. You can go online and see it. We have to make sure that when people go to protest their value, they get treated well. I will tell you, we've had some horror stories that we've heard. We had somebody walk in to Harris County to protest the value of his car. He ended up in handcuffs. And just because he was filming something at the front counter. So we've heard it all. And I wish we'd have another hour, we could go into appraisal district reform, because that's a big issue.
But Senator McCoy says the right thing. We were very close last session, and bulk of it was on reform. So please read that. If there's something we missed, we always want to hear that feedback.
The speaker had a great bill on transparency within the appraisal, and there's a lot of reform that needs to occur.
All right. Good stuff. Right back here.
Thank you. Steve Casey, living around Rock, Mountain River, Houston. Question is this, if the sales tax is the most efficient, right, because more people move here to Texas than anybody place else, and so your tax base grows, your revenue goes up without having to change your rate, then why can't we get for school funding just a simple division problem instead of Robin Hood? Total amount of funds versus total amount of students, and allow the students to be efficient with portability of funds, and that way we're not doing Robin Hood, and then the funds are going where most students are.
More of a student-centered, school district-centered funding?
Well, we've got slides on per capita, but we don't have time to go, individual student-based funding approach. We've been in recapture because the state's been in this litigation longer than anybody else. In fact, when we did the commission, we invited some national experts in, because we're really worried about these trends on recapture, because there's problems with equity, and then also the type of money that some counties and areas, like the one that she's from, can generate. Because when the sales tax issue is, you have to decide, are you gonna do point of sale, point of collection? And I can only imagine what the food fight would be is if we converted all 4,000 local taxing jurisdictions over to sales tax, because then we'd have to figure out how to divide up that pie, and that would make the legislative session pretty interesting. So we're looking at a combination of hybrid of all these things, and the bottom line is that I wanted you to see what the real spending was per student. Oh, can you flip back to that? Okay. All right, because this is important. No, not that, that's the 60 billion.
Hopefully my 11,000 is right.
Oh, well, stop. Okay, I do want to show this because this shows something to your ARBs. You've got real problems with appraisal review board independence and them listening to taxpayers, and quite frankly, people not falling asleep while they're doing it, okay? And you can see the difference between Tyler with 6 people on it and Harris County with 190. So the judge is right about that. There's a tremendous difference in size. But let's see if we can find the per capita school spending, because this is really important. No, it's not in there. Okay. Anyway, it's about 11,700. I'm going from memory.
Yeah.
And so to answer your question, you can change the mix, but you have to set up goals and top-down guidelines. We want performance-based funding. We want school districts that are doing well on administrative expenses to get rewarded for it. We want to see great programs like ACE, Promise, and P-TECH in Dallas spread all over the state. Because you have to take best practices, recognize them, and send them everywhere, because that's the only way you cut costs, okay? Because our real problem in the budget is the explosion in health and human services, and that is, to quote Ross Perot, the giant sucking sound to the south that will take the entire budget. So I'm glad we're working on education now. We did a great bill on transportation, and I see the model that we might be able to use some excise tax, just like we're doing on transportation, to help buy down tax rates and get more money into the system for good programs.
On the sales tax point, a consumption tax is theoretically more efficient than a property tax. A consumption tax that taxes 50% of business purchases, as the one in reality does, is not necessarily more efficient. And second, if you have a sales tax that surpasses 10%, you're gonna start losing a lot of sales that just try to avoid the sale altogether. So we have to be careful on that.
No, because there wouldn't be any cars sold on the tech side of Texarkana.
But just remember that we've got $60 billion worth of exemptions right now in our sales and in our property tax. At the rates we're at right now,
That's correct.
there's $60 billion worth of tax that has been exempted or is not being paid.
But my favorite one of those is when I tell, hey, we could tax some things that aren't, is golf lessons aren't taxed.
Well, obviously,
And those are the decisions that we have to make, is do we reevaluate the fact that golf
That would be
lessons?
another reason for me never to do any more in golf.
Yeah.
Have you seen the average person play golf?
by the way, the majority of those exemptions that are on the property side are ag for the rural counties. Okay, let's
Also,
go.
yeah, you also limit spending, right?
Right.
The spending side of it, and kind of
And
look
I
at
think
that.
Senator Hancock's had a great spending bill,
Yeah.
and we've had, whatever y'all think of whatever we've done in the state legislature, in the last 2 budget cycles, we limited our total growth to 3.8% in the first biennium and less than 1% in this last budget. So we've had 2 conservative budgets in a row. So I hope you keep telling everybody to go for a 3P, go for 3,
Yes.
right? Are you with me?
Yeah.
Are you with
I really love that, but as the left hand has passed bills and left prisoners in our jails, the right, which has cost us more in county property tax, the right hand is complaining about the facts that we're spending more in county property tax.
Judge, there's no fact in that statement that could possibly explain Harris County taking 51% more revenue in 4 years. There's not that many prisoners in the entire United States that
No,
can do it,
but
okay?
they would also be the 5th largest city if you took them and you know what? City services, there are things that cities do that counties don't, and you got 2 million people.
Judge, we've got limited purpose annexations out in the west side of Harris County, where the city of Houston sucks the money out because they take half the money with the MUDs on sales taxes. We're basically, that part of the city is, well, the extraterritorial part of it is subsidizing the people
I might not
that
get my
are
question in.
subsidizing the budget
I've got my
spending.
hand up.
And that's the problem with the city, it's their budget spending.
And it doesn't speak to the whole thing, but there is some honesty though in there, and I try to work with all 22 of my county judges, because spending more money in mental health, but when we leave prisoners, and I have this happen in my counties, mental health, because they can't stand competency, spending 6 months in jail to get a competency, to get mental health services, so they can stand trial, is a bigger waste of taxpayer dollars than spending the mental health in the first place.
And we've been doing a lot about criminal justice reform too. That's
And
been working on a lot.
Attorney Nelson, you hear how much we've spent $7 million more on mental health too.
All right, let's get another question. This is a good discussion.
Hello, my name is Jenny Melendez, and I am a public school teacher in Hidalgo County, which is in the city of Hidalgo, which is a bordering city, bordering the U.S.-Mexico border. And I keep hearing about school choice and raising, and I'm one of the few teachers that is for school choice. I think that a parent should be able to decide whether their child goes to a public school, a parochial school, or a charter school. But all of them should be treated the same way. As far as expectations, I'm a reading specialist, and a lot of my students that I actually assist and help out come from charter schools that were kicked out because they didn't want to bother with the business. But my question is again, we're the highest taxed one of the poorest and highest taxed, and I keep hearing about the Robin Hood, and I would actually like to see the state representatives and senators work towards not giving so much money. You know, my district's next to La Jolla.
By the way, La Jolla, you're La Jolla.
No, I'm in
Next door,
Valley.
I think she said.
All right, now,
I'm next to La Jolla, and as a teacher, I was appalled to learn that they had a water park,
by the way,
they had a golf cart.
I want her to say this
What
again.
gives-
Ma'am, if you could you say this again? There is an independent school district in Texas that has used their recapture money to buy what again?
A golf course and a water park.
They have a water park,
Yeah.
and now they're buying a golf course.
No, they already had a golf course.
You know, now, right, now,
Yeah.
and what are they buying next?
Golf course, water park, I don't know, I can't remember right now.
Okay.
It's crazy. I'm like,
Right, would you please ask a
this money
question?
should be
Well,
going into.
that's why recapture has to be frozen or stopped.
All right.
So,
La Jolla
and my question is, are you gonna
the
be,
textbook case for it.
yes, my question again is like, are you gonna be working to solving this issue? Because as a teacher, as a public school teacher, I'm appalled, and I have a home. And I see my students and their families struggling to pay their property taxes.
Yep.
And all the bonds that are passed in our
Please
cities.
ask a question. We got one more.
What?
Is that a question? What are we
Yes,
talking about?
yes, are you gonna be working towards maybe not making regulations that stops school districts from spending money on?
Yes, we're going to have a bill that stops school districts from buying water parks and golf courses.
Thank you.
Let's see.
And guys, I want that bill filed by Monday, okay?
All right, here we got a question right over here.
So,
Over here.
so obviously with the understanding that taxation is theft to begin with, what is the argument against rollback rates being lowered? Because representatives and senators love us to vote them into office, but they don't love us to vote for our own tax increases. So what is the argument against that?
Judge Wadley make the response.
Again, I think you've got things like economic downturns, you've got Harvey, you've got a lot of different stuff. And what you're trying to do, we've talked about some exceptions today. We've talked about some abuses. It should be up to, and I think that occurs in less than 5% of the cities and counties and schools around this state. And that's what the voters should be able to take care of instead of trying to take a single brush and paint the whole state with that same single brush.
Okay, let me do the
But
count.
Harvey was how many years ago?
Right, any bill,
A year ago.
any bill that has been filed, both the House version and the Senate version, had disaster emergency declaration and held for a Harvey situation. That's typical disinformation that's out there. The other thing is that we also have exclusions in the code for first-time construction, new construction, homestead exemption, and indigent defense. Now, Representative Stringer and I were at a meeting today where we're gonna be looking at not only that, but some child protective services and expanding that, because you don't want the small rural counties picking up whatever the problems are that get sent to them by the state. But the bottom line is that we've got to have guidelines that force the last equation. As values go up, tax rates have got to come down. The existing rollback rate is too high. That's why tax
Yep.
bills continue to rise and will until we can get that rate, that rollback rate lower. If we could do sales tax, we can move some sales tax back and forth, but we have to say that if you exceed a rollback rate, which the governor has the plan at 2.5, and I've supported that on the commission, the Senate plan was 4, the House plan was 6. All these numbers are lower than 8, and they need to be, and the lower they go, the better off taxpayers will be.
Well, and Senator, I heard in your discussion, one of the other things I think that's a great misnomer is we say, well, we were below the rollback and we were at 7.5%. But if you look, they grew at 13%, 14%, because of all the other exclusions. And we've seen ones that have grown at 13, 14% year over year over year. And as somebody, I think it was from the Baker Institute, sort of said, at what point do we get efficiencies in scale? We still only have one county judge in these counties that are growing. And so where do you have that in that aspect?
Yeah. All right, last question, please make it short.
I will. It's Cindy Benwell from Titus County in Northeast Texas. I kind of hate to bring this up, but I enjoy all the new industry that's moving into Texas. But at the same time, our education, our health and human services they have to go up. I mean, we're going to be spending more. And yet, we give tax abatements for 25 years to these large corporations. You talk about exemptions. I mean, I'd love to have a 25-year tax abatement too.
Did you happen to read my statesman piece last week?
I read a couple. I mean, first off,
Apple. But what about tax abatements?
we have never given a tax abatement that's been longer than 10 years, and it's usually 50% and not a full amount, because we recognize that there's still certain services we have to provide. School districts are not allowed to do abatements. So, you know, that's one other thing to look at from that perspective.
They do have 312, so I'm right.
315.
Sorry, that's right. Now, let's try to just go to one point that I hope everybody here can agree on. In the testimony we took around the state, for the first time that we know of, a major company, Dow Chemical, took a $2 billion plant, instead of putting it in Texas, they put it in Baton Rouge. Their number one problem was tax policy, because they pay $1 less there on tax than they do here.
Wow.
And that's like $20 billion over the life of the plant. You've got to understand that the job cycle.
These are the
that
people to
makes
contact.
Texas the important job creation engine for the nation. We can't do anything to interrupt that. Because if we do, that cuts off our growth. Well, Judge Watley and I can argue about how much is how much, you know, but so just understand, that's why I like the idea as values go up, rates come down, because everybody benefits. Because you pay about, in some counties, well, it's pretty close to this, you pay about half where you live and half where you work, okay? Because all of these are all indirect taxes. They all come back to you somehow. So I just strongly say, just remember, Texas business is the envy of the nation. And let's keep it that way, because jobs are the lifeblood of the Texas economy. Not screw that up. Right.
Well, I think that's a great way to end it, because the Texas model is one that we need to strengthen, right? Low taxes. We need spending relief in the process. Can't get away from that. Please go to our website, check out the lower property taxes sort of tool that we have there. Thank you all. Please visit the
All right, guys, take care. Thank you for watching. Hope you learned something.